Hello and welcome to a sort of short behind the scenes stream. This is very impromptu. There is no real kind of immediate plans to do this, but I've kind of decided I sort of should share some behind the scenes of this project. Just a few little disclaimers before we begin. This project is very much a passion project. It is not endorsed or affiliated with any institution. This largest project will have a series of videos that talk about the process that I've gone through, and it's designed largely as an experimentation / educational tool in the future. Anyway, so without further ado, I'm just going to give you a kind of very quick, brief overview of where the project currently is. The current project is still very early days, and I mean super early days. So the idea of the Project.Campus is to create a 1-for-1 scale of the University of Lincoln campus, which just so happens to be where I work essentially, and this was born out of a related project that happened. Don't want to go into too much details about that, but I've had this idea or this thought for quite a long time about what if we could have a virtual version of an educational space and what it means to kind of learn and how space adds to that learning experience. So let's just check that all this is set up correctly. Yeah. So here we have the library, which is untextured and completely empty inside. So as you can see, there's a few little erroneous problems that need to be addressed, but I've put it in there for now just so that I've got the kind of scale in there. So I'm going to say this is a near 1-to-1. It's not down to the centimetre, it's not down to the exact minute detail, but it's about correct based on reference material that I've used. So the way I've been doing this is I could have gone down the route of photogrammetry or LiDAR and just scan the campus and plop it into Unreal and off we go. It would have yielded me, near instant results. It'd be a lot less of a hassle. But for me, I wanted to focus on the interactivity level aspect and also optimization. So for those who may have experimented with 3D capturing or 3D modeling before, we have this kind of issue of kind of data leakage. We're trying to minimize any heavy workload on the systems. So for example, Project.Campus is designed long term, when it does get, probably in a year or so's time, will allow for multi-user experiences. So let's just jump in here for a second. There we go. So the idea is the users will be greeted with a main menu. They'll be able to choose an avatar. At the moment I'm just using default Unreal Pawn for the time being. And then you'll be able to connect to a local server. So all this is an internal project or internal piece at the moment. And you'll be able to network and socialize, and you'll each be streamed your own instance of that space, but you'll be able to see other people in it. It's also designed so it can be as optimized as possible for virtual reality experience. It will be a wired VR experience. It won't work on a Oculus Quest 2 because that would need so much more optimization. But so yeah, there'll be things like when you go up to certain location, let's see if it's still working. No, it's disabled. So there will be social spaces. So that's kind of one of the main things about this. I'm just going to give you a kind of quick of a guided tour. Like I said, this is very early days. A lot of this has only been worked on during the odd lunch break and odd kind of moment of quiet time. So you'll see a lot of placeholders. As you can see, all these white blocks here are basically placeholder buildings. I am going to actually walk there just because I do want to check some things as I am walking through the space. So Got another placeholder there. Where all these signs here are actually taken from location. So these are photos that are taken of each of the signage of the space. Texturing and models are still a long way off. This project is not going to be completed this year, if ever. Really, it's down to just as and when I can work on it, and I'm aiming to utilise this project for workshops I want to do. So looking at building something that's running entirely off blueprints. You can see there that wall's not done yet. Entirely off blueprints, so anybody can recreate this from scratch. So here we have ATB, or the Alfred Tennyson building, and inside here there'll be more placeholders. I put some kind of like construction things down. You see some more barriers down there, and I've started work on blocking out the MTech building. But if we go inside, these doors should open up, which they do. So do these ones. There we go. Although this one's, there we go, behave. Yeah. So you can see up here, for example, at the moment we have a photo, which would be which will actually be a shader eventually. So I'm actually going to use a 360 image in these spaces and replace them with a shader. So when you look at them at different angles, it gives the correct illusion and gives a correct reflection of it all and such. But I've just put a photo there just for a placeholder. The lifts will also be added in the next, well, probably at the end of the day, to be honest. Then we have these stairs. So you can see I've already started putting in some of the signages. The lighting, by the way, is nowhere near where it should be yet. There is also a day and night cycle in this. So the sun will set. There'll be we had a working weather system in when I built this in 4.27. By the way, I have built all this before, and I've had to rebuild it all from scratch in 5.1. So this is entirely a rebuild, not just a port. So here we have the second floor, and you'll see we have this color changing, glowy, emissive door. If I walk into it, it will teleport me, and what it's actually doing is it's a teleport crossed with a level stream. So ideally I'd like it so you wouldn't have to have a teleport and you could just walk from into each of the floors, each of the spaces, for example things like the TV studio, etc. But as we start to actually populate these spaces and we actually start to add in photogrammetry scans of the models and such, we're going to put a lot of demand on the system. So we're very much I'm at the blocking stage at the moment, and I'm trying to optimize things at the time being, get the core fundamentals in there. So if I go back into Teleporter, there we go. It unloads that floor 2, which is actually at the moment beneath the map. So it's we have the persistent map, which is the campus, and then we have the streamed elements, which are the floors or specialized spaces. I'm trying to work out the best way of optimizing that and working out the best way of making that kind of less jarring. I can actually make it so where we have that door and it's currently glowing, we can see into the level stream space. Not put that in yet. At the moment though, this project is, as you can see, quite a long way off, but it is running exceedingly smooth, and you may think, oh, it's running smooth because there isn't a huge amount in there. There is actually quite a lot of processes that are in here that aren't currently active. A lot of things I've disabled just for the time being. But this is going to be quite a huge campus. We're going to have running trains in here. Let's just go back over here. So if we open up my content menu. So back when this was in 4.27, hang on, to the main level, that's what I'm after, yeah, save. So when this was in 4.27, this was literally just the LPAC building. Let's just play the main menu just to show how this works. Here we go. So we've got our working title, which I need to at some point change. We can enter the campus, so choose enter campus. And at the moment, this is a very, again, alpha, very, very early build, blocking out process. But the idea here will be you'll be able to choose, you'll be able to see a map of the campus and choose where you want to go. I'm focusing on the Brayford campus because University of Lincoln actually has multiple campuses, and I would like to do all of them. But as you can imagine, it's going to take me a lot of time because I'm working on this on my own. It is, like I said, a passion project. It is an individual project at the moment. I would like to bring this into teaching in some way or involve other people. So I am currently at the moment, it's me going around with a phone, taking photos and then using those photos as references. It does also involve me quite often standing against walls, doors, windows, etc., counting how many windows there are across the building. And I have got floor plans which I'm using for the walls, for example, on the floors, but it's not an exact science. Like I said, I could do this easy way. I could just use LiDAR scanners. I have used a LiDAR scanners. I have scanned spaces within the university campus, and I could just take that data and put it in. Might do still yet, but I'm trying to at the moment optimize things as much as possible. So, for example, here we have the TV studio again. Ooh. Hang on, let me just go back at that. That's my bad, I swung around too fast. There's actually a collision on that wall there, so if I just walk forwards, there we go. So this is where I need to make things clearer. So for example, I need to make sure that the collision to take me back to the campus is actually a door. So this is where this will be probably a level streamed in asset again. But things like the TV studio here, which is not to scale, just FYI. The space is a lot wider and longer than it actually is, and up there's actually a mixing / control station. So what I'd like to have here is when users come in, they can interact with the camera. So you see that camera spin down there. I'm not going to walk into it and pick it up at the moment. But when you go to these cameras, you can choose what type of camera you want, whether you want a Sony, Arri, Red, etc. You pick up that camera, and then it will change you into a first person. And then you'll be able to choose the aperture, the focal length, and this kind of space is designed ideally in my head as a way for students to block out or plan their pieces and set designs within a virtual digital replication. So there is the use cases I see for this is as a social space, as a educational tool, but also as a kind of training tool / marketing tool, potentially down the line. But this very early days, like I said, to some degree, should I show you this at this stage? Probably not. It doesn't reflect the project in its true scope. And like I say, scope in a sense, it's like this is ambitious. If I want to do this, how I want to do it in my head and how I've planned it. But it's a project that I think I've kind of wanted to do for a while. So back when I was a student and I did computer games production at this very uni, I basically was on a project that was looking at digitizing the University of Lincoln's maps. So you could say, I was in this building and I want to find this room. You could click where you are and then where you want to go, and it'd create an augmented reality overlay. And so you put your phone, you can look around, you can see the overlay buildings and draw like an invisible line between where you are and where you want to go. And so I've kind of had elements of this since around 2013, but I haven't really picked up on it and I haven't really kind of got along with it. So I've kind of only restarted this project probably within the last week and a bit. So everything you've seen here is within a week and a bit and a week and a half or so's worth of work. And again, like I said, it's been very much as and when I can find time to do it. So I'd love this to be a lot further on than it is, but it is what it is at this stage. I mean, for example, things like the windows along here, I didn't know up until this week or so that there's actually 39 windows from this point to this point here, and then we have these kind of half windows that are on the edges. So and those kind of little details. I mean, these colours aren't correct at the moment, and if I actually go inside this building here, you see we have nothing in any of the floors. In fact, that's just planes at the moment, so hence there's actually nothing you can see through it, so it's a one-sided plane at the moment. I could have put the floors into each of these buildings, but then I'm thinking, if I'm doing this building, I'm going to have each floor loaded in there at all times. The amount of memory you can think about, it's not just building out the walls and the textures, it's got to put in each of the objects that are in each of the spaces, each of those rooms. I could load per chunk, but then I want this to be a network space, so all multiple users go in, and it's if I have it instanced or load level or stream level via instance. So if a user is on one floor, and let's say a user's in ATB and another user's in NDH on the same server, we don't want it to be loading in NDH and ATB for everybody when this person's only here and this person's over here. So we want it to load locally, ideally. So at the same time, we don't want the entire level to load everything in one go. So we're streaming things in. That seems to be the most optimal way of doing this at this time. There are certain elements that will have to be always loaded in. So the overall campus will be a persistent level, will be always loaded in. So these outside assets, these external sort of views, and in some cases, the ground floors of these bit spaces will also be always loaded in. But once we go to floor 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., we can have those streamed in, and that's a more optimal way of doing it. Certain buildings and certain spaces as well, we just don't need to worry about. So offices, we don't need to bother modelling or worrying about. MTech probably won't be largely modelled other than the ground floor and the theatre space at the back here. We won't be bothering with things like there's like a play school over here. We won't be bothering with that. We'll put the building in, and we'll put the Swan in and such, so like the local pub and stuff will go here. But we won't be bothering modelling those outside of taking a picture of the windows, and then so as you look around the angle, it looks like there's a 3D depth in there, like there's actual space in there, you can see into the space. So we're using like a shader for that, but we won't be modelling those spaces. Just because that's not within the remit that I've set myself with this project. So yeah, that's just the kind of progress of this. So what I'm going to do is over the next few months, probably once a month, I'll probably do an update video where we're looking at stages that we're at, and we'll break down some of the blueprints that are used. So when we have the multiplayer thing at a stage I'm comfortable to show, we will talk about how the multiplayer blueprint is set up and how we've optimized that for numerous users. I'm looking at probably a capacity of 12. I don't want to, it's going to be quite demanding as it is. I'm running this on a fairly powerful machine, but I would like this to obviously work on less powerful machines where possible. So that's our kind of goal, that's my challenge, and I hope to be able to take you on this journey and share you through it. Now, like I said, this is a passion project. This is not endorsed by the university. This is not commissioned. There is no financial involvement or risk on this, hence why it's going to be a slow process, because I'm not doing this full time. This has been done as a very as and when basis, and it's been utilised, and I'm designing it and building it with the intention of using it for educational materials that I want to run down the line. So that will always come first, and how accurate things are will be up to the kind of requirements of that particular space. So will I model every single radio studio and every single audio studio? Possibly not. I'll probably choose the most interesting of spaces and allow people into those spaces. Any spaces where we have a window and we just need to look in and we're not probably wanting users to go in there, we will just capture a 360 image, create a shader on that reflective surface, so when you look at it from different angles, a bit like how Spider-Man on the PS4 and PS5 works, where when you climb up the building and you're looking in, you see this false 3D sense of space, but it's just a shader. That's what we'll do with certain spaces. So same with some of the computer labs, where the computer labs are very similar. We will only choose the ones that are specialist or interesting for the time being, and we'll add to it, we'll build upon it. I will build, and the spaces I choose will be very much down to whether I can actually have access or get references for those spaces. So spaces like the medical school and the science building, and even to a degree which isn't actually modelled in here, the computing building, so School of Computing. Those kind of spaces probably won't be modelled, and if I do get modelled, it will require permissions, and it will be further down the line. So my priorities at the moment are spaces like ATB, it will be LPAC, and it will be the NDH building, so the College of Arts buildings essentially. And this big block will be eventually the Minerva building or the main building. That one is going to be fun to model. By the way, I am modelling these buildings in Blender as much as I can, and to some degree I'm using those Blender models then and building upon them using the geometry within Unreal where required. So I'm not a 3D modeler. I will, when it comes to things like chairs and furniture, I will model what I can. Anything that's more complicated will be a photogrammetry scan that will be then imported into the space. That's my current workflow. You can see here, with how our levels is built, we can choose between different spaces and work on them within this streaming map. So at the moment, everything is actually within this one space for editing. Once we load in, we unload what we don't see, we load what we see, and we just keep doing that cycle, and it's done on a local level. So that's how we're going. Anyway, I'm kind of running out of things to say. Like I said, this has got a long way to go, an incredibly long way to go. It's nowhere, we're only really at the sort of edges of starting, really. But yeah, hopefully this gives an idea and kind of hopefully shows you what I've been sort of spending my time and what I've been thinking about doing in the background. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, you can always leave them down in the comments down below. And I will see you again soon with future updates. Thank you. Goodbye. Let's open up OBS and end.